Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Thunderstrike, watching the stars through the main view screen when the alarm started ringing. The sound cut through the quiet hum of the ship like a knife through paper. His crew moved quickly to their stations as red lights flashed across the command center. Lisa Wong turned from her position at the communications console with wide eyes. She had been monitoring the long-range sensors for 3 hours without finding anything unusual. Now her screen showed patterns that made no sense. "Captain, we have something strange," she said while adjusting the controls to clear up the signal. "It is coming from very far away, and it does not match any human transmission we know." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The wave patterns looked different from anything they had seen before. The frequency was wrong, and the modulation was completely alien. This was not some lost human ship sending a distress call. "How far away?" he asked while studying the strange readings. "About 18 light years, sir," Lisa replied while running the signal through the computer filters. "The system shows it as Kepler 442, but we do not have much data on that area." The bridge crew gathered around as Lisa worked to clean up the transmission. The interference from space made it hard to understand, but slowly the alien sounds became clearer. When the universal translator finally locked onto the signal, everyone stopped what they were doing. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything they had ever heard. It sounded musical, like someone singing, but there was pain in every word. The translation made the meaning clear, and it sent chills down their spines. "This is Harmony Singer Veltar of the Lyrian Collective," the voice said with sadness that crossed all language barriers. "Our worlds are under attack by the Krex Dominion. Our peaceful fleets cannot fight against their war machines. We send this message to any civilized species who might help us. Our children are dying as our beautiful cities burn. Please, if there is any mercy in the galaxy, come to our aid." The message repeated 3 more times before cutting to static. The bridge remained silent as everyone processed what they had just heard. Jake had heard rumors about both species mentioned in the transmission, but he had never expected to encounter them directly. Lyrians were known throughout the galaxy as artists and musicians. Their crystal cities were said to be the most beautiful structures ever built. They were also completely peaceful, having never developed weapons more advanced than basic shields. They preferred to sing and create rather than fight. The Krex Dominion was different in every way possible. These reptilian warriors had been conquering worlds for decades. They lived for battle and showed no mercy to those they defeated. Their ships were built for one purpose, which was destroying their enemies. Completely Admiral Ben Cooper appeared on the main screen within minutes of receiving Jake's emergency report. The old soldier looked tired, but his eyes were sharp as he studied the alien transmission data. "This is confirmed alien contact," Ben said while reviewing the technical analysis. "Intelligence reports suggest the Lyrians are exactly what they claim to be. Peaceful beings who have never hurt anyone. The Krex are the opposite." Jake nodded while looking at the star charts showing the Kepler system. "What are your orders, sir?" Ben was quiet for a long moment as he considered the situation. First contact with alien species was supposed to follow careful protocols. There were procedures and committees that should be involved. But those procedures had never accounted for a situation like this. "Prep your ship for immediate departure," Ben finally said with determination in his voice. "I am calling up the Third Fleet. We are going to show these Krex what happens when they pick on innocent people." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Messages went out to every human ship within range, calling them to assemble at the edge of the solar system. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Captain Amy Chun brought her massive flagship, the UES Retribution, loaded with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built. Commander Rick Torres led a squadron of fast destroyers that could dance around enemy fire while delivering devastating attacks. Captain Nina Foster commanded the assault frigates designed for close combat and boarding actions. Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived with a team of scientists and xenobiologists who would help understand the alien species they were about to encounter. She had studied every piece of information available about both the Lyrians and the Kreks, but most of it was rumor and speculation. Chief Engineer Carlos Smith worked around the clock to make sure every ship was running at peak efficiency. He had concerns about operating so far from human space, but he kept them to himself. The crew needed confidence, not doubt. The fleet that assembled over the next 2 days was the largest humanity had ever put together. 70 ships ranging from massive dreadnoughts to small scout vessels, each one crewed by humans who had volunteered to travel into unknown space to help strangers. Jake found himself promoted to squadron commander as more ships arrived. The Thunderstrike would lead a group of heavy cruisers while coordinating with the other battle groups. It was more responsibility than he had ever wanted, but he accepted it without complaint. Dr. Kate Thompson set up medical facilities on every ship to handle both human and alien casualties. She had no idea what Lyrian biology was like, but she prepared for everything she could think of. The idea of treating wounded crystal beings seemed impossible, but she would do her best. As the fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Cooper addressed all the crews over the communication system. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of history. We are about to make first contact with alien species under the worst possible circumstances, he said while looking directly into the camera. We are not going there as conquerors or explorers. We are going as protectors. These Lyrians called for help, and we are going to answer. The jump to hyperspace was perfectly coordinated. 70 ships disappeared from normal space at exactly the same moment, heading toward a star system none of them had ever seen. The journey would take 8 days at maximum speed. During the voyage, the crews practiced constantly. Marines ran boarding drills, while pilots flew combat simulations. Engineers tested every system multiple times to make sure nothing would fail when they needed it most. Dr. Rodriguez spent her time studying everything known about the 2 alien species. The Lyrians seemed to be silicon-based life forms that had evolved on worlds with high crystal content. They communicated through harmonic frequencies and built their cities to amplify these songs. Kreks were more familiar in some ways. They were carbon-based reptiles from high-gravity worlds similar to Earth. But where humans had learned cooperation, the Kreks had embraced conquest. Their entire culture was built around military dominance. As they approached the Kepler system, long-range sensors began picking up the signs of battle. Energy weapons fired across space, while ships exploded in brilliant flashes. The beautiful Lyrian worlds were under siege. Jake stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays update with new information. 3 planets showed signs of bombardment, while Kreks battle groups patrolled the system like predators. The alien warships were dark and angular, bristling with weapons designed for destruction. Signal from Admiral Cooper, Lisa announced from her station. All ships prepare for combat. We drop out of hyperspace in 30 minutes. The final preparations were swift and efficient. Weapons powered up while shields reached full strength. Every crew member took their battle stations, knowing they were about to face an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds, but they also knew they were fighting for something more important than territory or resources. They were fighting because it was right, because someone had called for help, and they had answered. The countdown reached 0, and 70 human ships dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Kepler system. The Third Fleet had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The human fleet spread across space like a deadly flower opening its petals. Admiral Cooper watched from the bridge of the Retribution as his ships took their assigned positions. Each captain knew their role and moved with precision that came from years of training together. Jake Martinez positioned the Thunderstrike at the center of the heavy cruiser formation, while keeping his sensors focused on the inner system. The Krex ships were easy to spot against the star field. They moved in straight lines with no attempt at stealth or deception. "Count shows approximately 200 enemy vessels," reported Lieutenant Sam Baker from the weapons station. "They are arranged in 3 main battle groups with patrol squadrons." Covering the approaches to each planet, Amy Chun coordinated the fleet deployment from her flagship while studying the tactical situation. The Krex had positioned themselves perfectly to bombard the Lyrian worlds while protecting their own ships. It was a classic siege formation that had probably worked against dozens of other species. But the Krex had never faced humans before Dr. Elena. Rodriguez worked frantically in her science lab, trying to understand what they were seeing. The Lyrian cities were unlike anything in human experience. They rose from the planet's surfaces like massive crystals, catching and reflecting light in ways that created beautiful patterns. "The cities are not just built from crystal," she reported over the communication system. "They are grown. The Lyrians must shape them using harmonic frequencies to encourage crystal formation. No wonder their architecture is so beautiful." Unfortunately, many of those beautiful structures were now broken ruins. Krex bombardment had shattered the crystal formations, sending debris cascading down the mountainsides. The damage was not just physical, but cultural as well. Chief Engineer Carlos Smith monitored the fleet systems while trying to predict what kind of weapons they would face. Human intelligence on Krex technology was limited, but the energy signatures suggested plasma cannons and particle beams. "Their ships are heavily armored," he reported to Admiral Cooper. "But they seem to rely on brute force rather than advanced defensive systems. Our kinetic weapons should be effective if we can get close enough." Commander Rick Torres led his destroyer squadron on a wide sweep around the system perimeter. His ships were the fastest in the fleet and would serve as the eyes and ears for the main battle groups. The destroyers could also strike quickly and retreat before the enemy could respond. Captain Nina Foster prepared her assault frigates for close combat. These ships were smaller than the cruisers, but packed with marines and boarding equipment. If the battle went well, they might get the chance to capture Krex vessels and learn more about their technology. First sign that the Krex had noticed them came when a patrol group of 12 ships broke off from the main fleet. The alien vessels accelerated toward the human position with obvious confidence. They had probably faced this situation many times before Jake watched the approaching Krex ships on his tactical display. They were larger than human vessels, but moved with less grace. Everything about their design suggested they were built for intimidation rather than efficiency. "Incoming transmission from the enemy ships," Lisa Wang announced from her communication station. "They are demanding we identify ourselves and state our business in this system." Admiral Cooper appeared on screens throughout the fleet. His response was broadcast on all frequencies, so both the Krex and any surviving Lyrians could hear his words. "This is Admiral Ben Cooper of the Human Third Fleet," he said with calm authority. "We are here in response to a distress call from the Lyrian Collective. You will cease your attacks on their worlds immediately and withdraw from this system." The reply came quickly and was filled with reptilian contempt. The voice that spoke for the Krex was harsh and grating compared to the musical tones of the Lyrians. "I am War Master Skarn of the Krex Dominion," the alien commander said with obvious amusement. "You mammals dare to interfere with our rightful conquest. We have destroyed 100 worlds and enslaved their populations. Your small fleet will make a fine addition to our trophy collection." Ben Cooper smiled grimly at the alien's arrogance. "Then come and take it." The Krex patrol group immediately changed course and accelerated toward the human fleet. Their ships began charging weapons while spreading into an attack formation. They clearly expected to scatter the mammals with a single, devastating assault, but humans had different ideas about how space combat should work. Rick Torres received permission to engage and led his destroyers forward to meet the enemy charge. The human ships moved like dancers, spinning and weaving through space in patterns that confused the Krek's targeting systems. First exchange of fire lit up the darkness with energy beams and missile trails. Krek's plasma cannons reached out toward the human ships but found only empty space where their targets had been moments before human kinetic weapons answered with devastating effect. Tungsten projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed punched through Krek's armor like it was paper. The aliens had never faced weapons that combined such speed with such mass. Jake watched from his command position as the destroyer Lightning performed a maneuver that would have killed most alien crews. The ship pulled 15 gravities in a turn that brought its weapons to bear on a Krek's vessel that thought it was safely positioned. Direct hit on enemy ship number 4, reported Julie Harris from the sensor station. Their armor is breached and they are venting atmosphere. The battle lasted only 12 minutes, but it demonstrated something important to both sides. The Krek's patrol group was completely destroyed without managing to inflict significant damage on the human ships. The watching alien fleets suddenly realized they faced something new on the surface of Lyria Prime Harmony singer Veltar, gathered with her surviving people in one of the few crystal amphitheaters that remained intact. They had felt the vibrations of battle through the planet itself, and now watched strange new ships engage their tormentors. "Who are these beings?" asked one of the younger Lyrians, while pointing at the tactical display. "Their ships move like living things, and their weapons strike with such precision." Veltar studied the battle through her crystal viewing device. The new ships were clearly built for war, but they fought with purpose rather than cruelty. They had come in response to the distress call, which meant they possessed something the Kreks did not understand: compassion. Dia Rodriguez monitored alien communications from her position on the Retribution. The Krek's command frequencies were filled with confusion and growing concern. They had never lost an entire patrol group so quickly. "They are calling us void demons and death-spawned hunters," she reported with some amusement. "The concept of our combat tactics seems to be beyond their understanding." The Kreks had built their empire by facing species that fought in predictable ways. Most aliens developed along similar lines, creating weapons and tactics that followed logical patterns. Humans were different because Earth had taught them to be different. Carlos Smith analyzed the debris from the destroyed Krek ships and found exactly what he expected. The aliens built everything to overpower their enemies through superior firepower and armor. They had never needed to develop the adaptive tactics that humans took for granted. Admiral Cooper studied the tactical situation and began planning the main assault. The Kreks had committed only a small fraction of their fleet to test the human capabilities. Now they would have time to prepare their defenses and call for reinforcements. Cooper had advantages that War Master Skarn could not imagine. Human crews could function under acceleration that would kill most aliens. Human ships could perform maneuvers that violated every tactical doctrine in the galaxy. Most importantly, human commanders could adapt their strategies faster than any computer system. The fleet continued its approach toward the inner system while the crews prepared for the real battle. Marines checked their equipment while pilots reviewed attack patterns. Engineers made final adjustments to weapons and shields. Dr. Kate Thompson set up her medical facilities to handle the casualties she knew were coming. The Kreks would not give up easily, and the battle for the Lyrian worlds would test human courage and skill to their limits. Jake Martinez stood on his bridge, watching the enemy fleet begin to reorganize. The Kreks were pulling their ships into a massive wall formation that had served them well in previous conquests. 200 warships arranged in overlapping fields of fire, but War Master Skarn had made one critical error. He was still thinking like a Krek's commander facing a conventional enemy. He had no idea that he was about to face the descendants of a death world, where survival required constant adaptation. The human fleet continued its steady advance, while Admiral Cooper broadcast. A final message to any Lyrians who might be listening. This is the human Third Fleet. We have come to help you. Stay strong and keep your people safe. We will drive these invaders from your worlds. In the crystal halls of Lyria Prime, the survivors began to sing. Their harmonies carried hope across the vacuum of space toward the approaching human ships. For the first time since the Krex invasion, they dared to believe that salvation was possible. The stage was set for a battle that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. Humans were about to announce their arrival on the galactic scene in the most dramatic way possible. The main battle began as the first rays of Kepler 442's sun touched the crystal cities of Lyria Prime. War Master Skarn had arranged his 200 ships in the traditional Krex battle wall that had broken the defenses of countless worlds. Each vessel overlapped its fire with its neighbors, creating a zone of destruction that no enemy had ever survived, but humans did not fight like any enemy. The Krex had faced before Admiral Cooper split his fleet into 3 attack groups that approached from different angles. Jake Martinez led the heavy cruisers in a direct assault, while Rick Torres took his destroyers through the asteroid belt that surrounded the system. Nina Foster guided her assault frigates toward the flanks, where they could exploit any gaps in the enemy formation. The opening exchange was spectacular. Krex plasma cannons filled space with deadly energy, while human kinetic weapons answered with tungsten projectiles that glowed white-hot from their passage through space. The first few minutes of combat seemed to favor the aliens who had superior numbers and firepower. Then the humans began to move. Jake pushed the Thunderstrike through a maneuver that pulled 20 gravities and brought his ship above the Krex formation. His crew remained conscious through acceleration that would have killed most aliens, while their weapons tracked targets with deadly precision. Multiple hits on the enemy command ship, reported Sam Baker, as his targeting systems locked onto Krex vessels. Their shields are failing, and we have confirmed armor penetration. The Krex discovered that humans could do things in space that violated every tactical manual ever written. Human ships used planetary gravity wells as slingshots, while employing debris fields as weapons. They coordinated their attacks with precision that seemed almost telepathic. Rick Torres led his destroyers through the asteroid belt in a display of piloting skill that left the watching Krex speechless. His ships wove between massive rocks, while firing at enemy vessels that tried to follow. The aliens found themselves trapped in a maze where humans moved like they belonged. Enemy formation is breaking apart, reported Julie Harris from her sensor station. They are trying to reform, but our attack vectors are keeping them scattered. Dr. Elena Rodriguez monitored the battle from her science station while analyzing Krex communication frequencies. The alien commander was shouting orders in their harsh language, but his subordinates seemed confused by tactics they had never encountered. They keep calling us impossible, she reported with satisfaction. Their tactical computers cannot predict our movements because we are not following any recognized combat doctrine. The truth was that humans had developed their combat skills on a world where everything tried to kill them. Earth had taught them to be adaptable and creative, while most aliens evolved on more peaceful worlds. The Krex were deadly predators, but they thought in straight lines. Carlo Smith worked frantically to maintain the fleet while ships performed maneuvers that stressed every system to its limits. Human engineering was robust enough to handle the punishment, but it required constant attention. All ships report systems within acceptable parameters, he announced over the command frequency. We can maintain this level of combat for at least 6 more hours. That was longer than most space battles lasted, but the Krex were proving to be stubborn opponents. Their ships were tough, and their crews fought with the desperation of predators who suddenly found themselves being hunted. Amy Chun coordinated the overall battle from her flagship while analyzing the enemy response patterns. The Krex were trying to reform their battle line, but human attacks kept hitting them from unexpected angles. Target their command vessels, she ordered over the tactical network. If we can disrupt their coordination, they will start making mistakes. Nina. Foster led her assault frigates in a daring attack that brought them within knife-fighting range of the Krex formation. Her ships were smaller and more vulnerable, but they carried Marines, trained for boarding actions. Frigate squadron engaging enemy cruiser Bone Render, she reported as her ship swung around a massive Krex vessel. Preparing to attempt boarding, the sight of human ships attaching themselves to Krex hulls like parasites sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. No species had ever been crazy enough to attempt boarding actions during a major space battle. Jake watched his tactical display as the battle developed across the entire system. Human ships were everywhere, at once hitting the enemy from directions they could not defend. The Krex wall formation was collapsing under pressure it had never been designed to handle on the surface of Lyria Prime. Veltar and her people watched the impossible battle unfold above them. The crystal beings had gathered in their great amphitheater, where the harmonics allowed them to sense the vibrations of combat. The new ships fight like musicians, observed one of the elders while studying the graceful movements of human vessels. Each one plays its part in a greater symphony of destruction. Veltar agreed with the comparison. Humans moved their ships like instruments in an orchestra, with each vessel contributing to an overall pattern. The Krex fought like individual predators, while humans fought like a pack. The breakthrough came when Carlos Smith managed to hack into Krex shield frequencies using data captured from the destroyed patrol ships. Suddenly, human weapons began penetrating defenses that had seemed impregnable. All ships, this is Admiral Cooper, came the announcement over fleet communications. Enemy shields are now vulnerable to our weapons. Press the attack and show no mercy. Krex fleet began to come apart as human fire found its targets with devastating effect. Ships that had seemed invulnerable moments before exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up the system. Warmister Skarn watched his carefully planned formation dissolve into chaos as mammals did impossible things with their primitive ships. His tactical computer kept reporting that human maneuvers were beyond the physical limits of known technology. How are they still conscious? He demanded of his science officer while watching a human cruiser pull 30 gravities in a turn that should have liquefied its crew. What kind of beings can survive such acceleration? The answer was Deathworlders, but the Krex had no concept for what that meant. They came from a heavy world themselves, but nothing like the Hell Planet that had forged humanity into something beyond normal. Biological Limits Dr. Kate Thompson worked frantically in her medical bay, treating the few human casualties from the battle. Most injuries came from the extreme maneuvers rather than enemy fire. Human ships were simply too fast and unpredictable for Krex weapons to track effectively. Casualty report shows minimal losses, she announced to Admiral Cooper. Most injuries are from acceleration stress rather than combat damage. The tide turned completely when Rick Torres led his destroyers in a flanking attack that caught the Krex reserve fleet completely by surprise. The alien commander had held back 50 ships to exploit any human weakness, but instead found his reserves under attack from an impossible angle. Enemy reserves are scattering, reported the destroyer squadron leader as his ships tore through alien formations. They are attempting to withdraw, but we are staying with them. Nina. Foster achieved the impossible when her Marines successfully boarded a Krex heavy cruiser and captured it intact. The alien crew surrendered rather than face humans in close combat. They had heard stories about Deathworld predators, but experiencing them was something entirely different. Boarding successful, she reported with satisfaction. We have prisoners and a complete alien ship for analysis. The Krex fleet began to break and run as their casualties mounted beyond acceptable levels. Warmaster Skarn found himself commanding a force that was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. All ships withdraw to jump points, he ordered with bitter frustration. We will regroup and return with reinforcements. But his withdrawal was not the organized retreat he had planned. Human ships pursued the fleeing Kreks like wolves chasing wounded prey. Many alien vessels never made it to the safety of hyperspace Jake Martinez brought. The Thunderstrike alongside the massive Kreks flagship that was trying to escape. The alien dreadnought was 3 times the size of his ship, but it was also damaged and desperate. This is Captain Jake Martinez of the human fleet, he broadcast on all frequencies. Surrender now and your crew will be treated according to the Ka. Laws of war. War Master Skarn's response came back filled with reptilian rage. Never, mammal. The Kreks do not surrender to inferior species. The final duel between the 2 ships was brief but spectacular. Human weapons found weak points in Kreks armor, while alien plasma beams missed their nimble target. When the smoke cleared, the enemy flagship was a drifting wreck of the 200 Kreks. Ships that had begun the battle, fewer than 50 escaped to hyperspace. The remainder were either destroyed or captured by human forces. The most devastating defeat in Kreks military history had taken less than 4 hours. Admiral Cooper surveyed the battlefield from his flagship, while damage reports came in from across the fleet. Human losses were surprisingly light, considering the scale of the engagement. Superior tactics and training had overcome superior numbers. Signal all ships to begin search and rescue operations, he ordered while looking at the tactical display. Any Krek survivors are to be treated as prisoners of war. The aftermath of battle brought new challenges as Admiral Cooper surveyed the wreckage scattered across the Kepler system. 53 Kreks vessels had been destroyed, while another dozen were captured intact. The human fleet had suffered only minor damage with no ships lost, though several needed repairs. Jake Martinez coordinated the search and rescue operations from the Thunderstrike, while his crew worked to process nearly 2,000 Kreks prisoners. The reptilian warriors were sullen and defiant in captivity, but they followed orders when faced with human guards. The prisoners keep asking how we survived their weapons, reported Lieutenant Dan Brooks, who was handling interrogations. They seem genuinely confused by our combat performance. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was equally puzzled by the aliens she was studying. The Kreks were formidable predators with natural armor and enhanced strength, but their thinking seemed limited compared to humans. They approached every problem with brute force rather than creativity. They are intelligent but inflexible, she explained to Admiral Cooper during the post-battle briefing. Their entire culture is built around military dominance, so they cannot adapt when faced with superior tactics. The real surprise came when the first Lyrian ships approached the human fleet. The crystal beings had built vessels that looked more like works of art than functional spacecraft. Their hulls were transparent in places, allowing observers to see the beautiful internal structures. Captain Amy Chun received the Lyrian delegation aboard the Retribution with all the ceremony she could manage on short notice. The aliens moved like living music, with their crystal bodies reflecting light in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. Harmony singer Veltar served as the primary spokesperson for her people. She stood nearly 8 feet tall with a body that seemed to be carved from living diamond. When she spoke, her voice created harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. We cannot express our gratitude for what you have done, she said through the universal translator, while her words created visible patterns in the air. The Kreks would have destroyed everything we hold dear. Dr. Rodriguez served as the cultural liaison while trying to understand beings who are completely unlike anything in human experience. The Lyrians thought in terms of harmony and cooperation, while humans had learned to think in terms of survival and adaptation. Your species confuses us, Veltar admitted during one of their conversations. You wage war with terrible efficiency, but you came to help strangers without asking for payment. We do not understand such contradictions. Amy Chun smiled at the comment. We prefer to think of ourselves as complicated. Our world taught us to fight, but our hearts taught us who to fight for. The cultural exchange revealed fascinating differences between the species. Lyrians had evolved on worlds with high crystal content, where cooperation was essential for survival. Their entire civilization was built around creating beauty and harmony. Humans came from a death world where everything tried to kill them. They had learned to be aggressive and adaptable, but they had also developed strong protective instincts toward those who could not defend themselves. Chief Engineer Carlos Smith worked with Lyrian technicians to understand their crystal technology. The aliens grew their ships rather than building them using harmonic frequencies to shape crystal matrices into useful forms. Their technology is completely biological, he reported to Admiral Cooper. They can grow new ships given enough time, and raw materials, but they have no weapons more advanced than basic shields. The strategic implications were obvious. The Lyrians possessed knowledge that could revolutionize human technology, while humans could provide the military protection the crystal beings desperately needed. Dr. Kate Thompson treated injured Lyrians using techniques she had never imagined would be necessary. The crystal beings could repair minor damage to themselves, but major injuries required careful harmonic therapy to encourage proper regrowth. They are remarkably resilient, she observed, while working on a Lyrian who had been injured during the bombardment. Their bodies can regenerate damage that would be fatal to most species. The first formal meeting between human and Lyrian leaders took place in one of the few crystal amphitheaters that had survived the Krex attack. The building focused sound in ways that allowed the aliens to communicate through pure harmony. Admiral Cooper stood before an audience of several thousand crystal beings, while Veltar translated his words into the musical language her people understood. The moment felt historic as two completely different species attempted to forge an alliance. We offer friendship and protection, Cooper said, while looking directly at the assembled Lyrians. In return, we ask only for knowledge and cooperation. Together, we can build something stronger than either of us could achieve alone. The Lyrian response came as a song that filled the amphitheater with harmonies that seemed to touch the soul. Even through translation, the meaning was clear. Accepted the human offer with gratitude and hope. Jake Martinez found himself assigned to establish the first permanent human base in the Lyrian system. His engineering teams worked alongside crystal beings to create facilities that could serve both species. Base took shape on one of the moons orbiting Lyria Prime. Human technology provided the structure, while Lyrian crystal growing techniques created beautiful details that made the facility feel more like art than military construction. It is unlike anything we have ever built, observed Carlos Smith while watching Lyrian workers shape crystal formations with pure sound. They can create materials with properties we are only beginning to understand. The strategic value of the alliance became clear as more information reached both species. The Krex Dominion controlled over 40 star systems and had been expanding steadily for decades. They would not accept their defeat. Quietly, Dr. Rodriguez analyzed captured Krex communication equipment and discovered disturbing intelligence about their long-term plans. The Reptilian Empire was already calling for reinforcements. While planning a massive counterattack, they are mobilizing everything they have, she reported during the daily briefing. Our victory here was just the beginning. They will return with 10 times as many ships, but the alliance was already bearing fruit in unexpected ways. Lyrian scientists shared their knowledge of galactic politics while revealing the locations of other peaceful species under threat from various predator races. Humans learned about the Aquari, who lived in the deep oceans of their water worlds and possessed biotechnology that could revolutionize medicine. The Florans were plant-based beings who had mastered genetic engineering, but possessed no military capabilities. Most importantly, they learned about the Council of Civilized Worlds. which governed most of the galaxy through diplomacy rather than force. The Council had been aware of the Krek's threat for years, but lacked the military power to stop them. They have been waiting for someone like you, Veltar explained during one of her meetings with Admiral Cooper. A species powerful enough to stand against the predators, but wise enough to protect rather than conquer. The implications were staggering. Humanity was being invited to join a galactic community as its primary military defender. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity. Rick Torres led the first joint patrol between human destroyers and Lyrian scouts. The crystal ships were beautiful to watch as they danced through space alongside their human escorts. The sight symbolized something new beginning. The galaxy is about to change, he reported to Fleet Command while watching Lyrian vessels practice formation flying with his destroyers. We are not just making allies. We are creating something completely new. Nina Foster established training programs to teach human Marines how to work with Lyrian forces. The crystal beings had no military tradition, but they possessed abilities that could be valuable in combat situations. Their natural harmonic communication allowed instant coordination across vast distances, while their ability to shape crystal could create instant fortifications. Combined with human tactical knowledge, they could become formidable defenders. The first test of the new alliance came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected a Krek's probe ship approaching the system edge. The enemy was clearly gathering. Intelligence for their planned counterattack. Jake Martinez led a mixed squadron of human and Lyrian ships to intercept the probe. The operation went perfectly with human tactics and Lyrian coordination combining to capture the enemy vessel intact. Intelligence indicates the Kreks are planning something big, he reported after interrogating the captured crew. They are calling this the Great Cleansing, and they plan to eliminate both our species. Admiral Cooper studied the intelligence reports while planning humanity's response. The Kreks were gathering the largest fleet in their history for an assault that would determine the future of the galaxy, but humans had advantages the Reptilian Empire could not imagine. They had allies now and access to knowledge that could tip the balance. Most importantly, they had proven that even the most dangerous predators could be defeated. The stage was set for a conflict that would reshape galactic civilization. Humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming the guardians of peace, while their enemies gathered their strength for one final assault in the crystal cities of Lyria Prime. The survivors worked to rebuild their civilization with human help. The formal alliance ceremony took place 6 months after the great battle in the largest crystal amphitheater on Lyria Prime. Representatives from 12 peaceful species had arrived to witness the signing of the Mutual Defense Charter that would reshape galactic politics. Admiral Cooper stood beside Harmony Singer, Veltar as they prepared to sign the document that would bind their species together. The crystal being had become not just an ally, but a friend during the months of negotiation and cooperation. Today, we create something new, Cooper said while addressing the assembled delegates. Not an empire built on conquest, but a confederation built on protection. We offer our strength to defend those who cannot defend themselves. The Lyrian response came as a song that filled the amphitheater with harmonies of hope and gratitude. Other species added their own voices, creating a symphony that carried across space. To listening human ships, Jake Martinez watched the ceremony from the bridge of the Thunderstrike while his ship patrolled the system edge. Intelligence reports suggested the Kreks were planning another attack, but they had not yet gathered the courage to test human defenses again. Signal from the outer sensor grid, reported Lisa Wong from her communication station. We have multiple ships approaching from hyperspace. Configuration suggests they are friendly. The new arrivals were delegates from the Council of Civilized Worlds, bringing official recognition of the Human-Lyrian Alliance. Their ships were strange and beautiful, reflecting the diverse nature of galactic civilization. Dr. Alaina Rodriguez served as the primary xenobiologist for the expanding diplomatic mission. She had cataloged dozens of new species during the past months while learning about cultures that spanned thousands of years. The Aquari delegate is requesting a water-filled environment for the negotiations, she reported while coordinating the complex logistics of multi-species diplomacy. The Floran representative needs specific atmospheric conditions for their photosynthetic processes. The diversity was staggering, but also encouraging. Each species brought unique knowledge and capabilities that could benefit the growing alliance. The Aquari possessed biotechnology that could revolutionize medicine, while the Florans had mastered ecological engineering. Chief Engineer Carlos Smith worked with scientists from multiple species to develop new technologies that combined their different approaches. Human adaptability proved valuable in bridging the gaps between vastly different civilizations. The crystal growing techniques are compatible with our hull materials, he reported during one of the technical briefings. We could build ships that are both functional and beautiful while incorporating Lyrian harmonic systems. Dr. Kate Thompson established the first multi-species medical facility that could treat patients from dozens of different biological kingdoms. The challenge was enormous, but the potential benefits were equally significant. Each species has evolved different solutions to medical problems, she explained, while demonstrating new treatment techniques. By combining our knowledge, we can help beings that would otherwise face certain death. The real breakthrough came when the Yav's Council formally invited humanity to join as the military arm of galactic civilization. The offer came with enormous responsibilities, but also unprecedented opportunities. Captain Amy Chun represented humanity during the crucial negotiations, while Admiral Cooper remained in the Lyrian system coordinating defense preparations. Discussions were complex, but the outcome was never really in doubt. They need us, she reported during a secure communication session. The Kreks are not the only predator species threatening peaceful civilizations. There are others, and the Council lacks the military power to stop them. The agreement granted humanity significant autonomy in military matters, while requiring them to protect any Council member who requested assistance. It was exactly the role humans were suited for. Given their background and capabilities, Rick Torres established the first joint training academy, where human military doctrine could be taught to volunteers from peaceful species. The goal was not to create armies, but to develop defensive capabilities. Most of these beings have never held a weapon, he reported while watching Lyrian volunteers practice basic combat techniques. But they learn quickly when they understand the principles behind human tactics. Nina Foster led the development of new ship designs that incorporated technologies from multiple species. The hybrid vessels combined human weaponry with Lyrian crystal systems and Council defensive technologies. The first prototype should be ready for testing within 3 months, she announced during the engineering review. It will be the most advanced ship ever built with capabilities that exceed anything currently in service. The new ship designs represented something unprecedented in galactic history. Previous civilizations had either been entirely peaceful or completely militaristic. The human alliance offered a third option, based on protection rather than conquest. Dr. Rodriguez monitored communication intercepts that suggested the Kreks were indeed planning a massive counterattack. But intelligence also indicated they were having difficulty convincing other predator species to join them. They are calling humans an existential threat to all predator civilizations, she reported during the daily intelligence briefing. But their potential allies are hesitant to face an enemy that defeated the Kreks so decisively. The psychological impact of the human victory was spreading throughout the galaxy. Peaceful species were finding new hope, while aggressive empires reconsidered their expansion plans. The balance of power was shifting in favor of civilization. Jake Martinez received command of the first mixed squadron, consisting of ships from 6 different species. The vessels looked like nothing that had ever flown together, but they represented something entirely new. Squadron operational status shows all ships Ready for patrol duties, he reported while leading the formation through training exercises. Integration is proceeding faster than projected. The sight of human destroyers flying alongside Lyrian crystal ships and council vessels sent a clear message to anyone watching. The age of predator dominance was ending while something better was beginning. Veltur worked tirelessly to coordinate the cultural aspects of the growing alliance. Each species brought different traditions and perspectives that needed to be balanced with practical military requirements. Harmony is more than music, she explained during one of her meetings with human commanders. It requires understanding and respect for differences while working toward common goals. The philosophy proved successful as more species requested membership in the alliance. The Council worlds provided a framework for peaceful cooperation, while humanity offered protection from those who would threaten that peace. The first real test came when the Krex finally launched their counterattack, with over 500 ships drawn from across their empire. But they faced a very different situation than they expected. Admiral Cooper commanded a fleet of 200 vessels, representing 15 different species. The ships moved with precision that reflected months of joint training, while their weapons incorporated technologies from across the galaxy. The battle was even more one-sided than the first encounter. Human tactics combined with superior technology and motivated crews proved devastating against an enemy that still thought in terms of outdated doctrines. Warmister Skarn died when his flagship was destroyed by concentrated fire from the Alliance fleet. His death marked the end of Krex expansion and the beginning of their long retreat into isolation. Victory celebrations took place on worlds across the galaxy as peaceful species realized they no longer needed to fear predator attacks. Human alliance had proven that protection was possible. Jake Martinez stood on his bridge 6 months later, watching joint patrols that had become routine. Human ships worked alongside crystal vessels and council craft in formations that represented something unprecedented. Signal coming in from the outer system. Lisa reported with excitement in her voice. It's another distress call. The Vorthen system is under attack by raiders. The captain smiled as he gave the orders that had become humanity's calling card. Set course for the Vorthen system. Someone needs our help. The Alliance fleet turned toward another star system where beings cried out for protection. They carried with them the promise that no peaceful species would face extinction while humans drew breath in. The crystal cities of Lyria Prime, the songs of gratitude continued to echo through space. They told the story of the Deathworlders, who had answered a desperate call and stayed to become guardians of the innocent. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their ships or tactics, but their unwillingness to let evil triumph unopposed. They had found their place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors, and across the spiral arms of the galaxy peaceful species slept safely knowing that if they called for help, the humans would answer. The age of fear was ending, while the age of hope had just begun.